The man never thought that his wife, who had passed away 10 years ago, would appear in front of him again. Although the male protagonist did not believe it at the beginning, he could not bear the other party's tone when she was angry. He had spent half his life in prison, and his wife's image was etched in his heart. This beautiful time began 10 years ago, when the male protagonist was still a company favorite. The company was hesitant about his proposed plan, but only Guho from management suggested it might be worth trying. This only boosts the male protagonist's favor for Guhei. After completing their tasks, he kindly offered to take her home, but unfortunately, he got a stomachache on the way. Although he refused to admit that it was his stomach that made the noise, Guhei finally took out the lunchbox he made himself and gave it to the male protagonist. The male protagonist had never witnessed such a scene. The luxurious lunchbox before him delights Guhei, despite the exaggerated eating style. The two chat increasingly, leading to the male protagonist and Guhei marrying 2 months later. The three live happily, but a phone call inevitably pulls the male protagonist back to reality. It turns out that his boss asked him to have a drink after get off work, but thinking of his daughter at home, the male protagonist still refused. It's just that the male protagonist didn't really want to go, but his wife's death 10 years ago made him give up life. For dinner, he can only eat takeout. Just then, the doorbell rang. Suddenly, there was a ring. When he opened the door, he saw a child who had never been in love. Although he didn't say anything after opening the door, the other party insisted that this was his home and that she was the mother of the male protagonist's wife, Mai. But at first, the male protagonist thought it was the child's. It was a prank, but she never thought that the other party would tell her every little thing about their love. The male protagonist found it ridiculous, but the other party's tone and demeanor mirrored his wife's. The next second, Guhei turned into a mother and scolded the two for not taking good care of themselves after she left. Every day, they only had takeout and yujukai. However, the two felt relieved by being scolded. The next one was Mai. As a woman in her 20s, she didn't know that finding a man was happiness, like your mother didn't go out when she was in her 20s. The male protagonist felt ashamed. After scolding the two, Guhei prepared to leave. After all, he now has his own. After explaining the rest of the family, Guhei also left, but the male protagonist could not help but rush to his wife in the next second. Although his wife really became an elementary school student, the emptiness of the past 10 years can only be filled by her. But now, after all, she is a primary school student. If she is too close to an uncle like the male protagonist, it will also have an impact. Guho hopes the father and daughter can regain their confidence in life. The next day arrived quickly. The male protagonist now seemed like a different person, leaving his colleagues surprised. He also enjoys the lunch his wife prepares daily. This kind of life is simply thriving. However, at this time, a female colleague came to his side. The other party also said that the male protagonist today seemed to be different from usual. The male protagonist found this matter too magical and did not disclose much to outsiders. It was learned that the male protagonist would also make lunchboxes every day and bring them over to eat. The maid immediately said that she and the male lead had a good relationship, but if the male lead didn't mind, they could eat lunch together in the future. The kind male lead accepted without hesitation. The next day at work, the maid delivered 2 lunchboxes to him. As a person, he didn't want to waste the extra ingredients, so he gave one to the male protagonist. To avoid waste, the male protagonist had to accept it, but he didn't expect Guho to be unable to wait for him to finish work. When he came to the park, he found that the male protagonist kept showing off the lunchbox and it was not made by himself. After learning that the other party was an unmarried girl in her 20s, Guho immediately expressed his position as the wife of the male protagonist. But the male protagonist just accepted it based on the principle of not wasting. You know that what your wife makes is the most delicious in the world. I understand. That's you. Do you really like me? What? Of course I like you. Then the wife smiled and the male protagonist says, "Don't you realize? Now wife says I know you always love me even more than your life."